She hadn't eaten since Tuesday. Not because she forgot, not because she wasn't hungry. Because the moment Yongjin Lee walked into room 418 of Seoul National University Hospital, every meal tray that arrived after that got set aside, untouched, growing cold on the wheeled table beside her bed. The nurses knew. They'd stopped asking. Yongjin knew. He'd stopped insisting. He had built the most feared criminal empire between Busan and Incheon with his hands, his silence, and his willingness to do what other men only threatened. He had made grown men leave rooms without standing. He had rebuilt fortunes and ended careers with a single phone call made quietly from the back of a car. He could not make his mother eat. Park Soon-yi was 71 years old, 98 pounds, and the only person alive who still called him by his childhood name. She had a tumor pressing against the left side of her stomach. The surgery had been 8 days ago. The doctors said successful. Her body had not read that report. She refused the formula through the tube, pulled the IV twice, turned her face toward the wall when the nutritionist came in with the meal plan laminated in a blue folder. Not hungry, she would say. She had been saying it for 4 days. On the morning of day 4, Yongjin sat in the chair beside her bed and did not speak. He was not a man who filled silence. He let it stand. He watched his mother breathe, shallow, tired, and felt, for the first time in a very long time, the particular shame of powerlessness. He had paid for the best wing in the hospital. He had the senior attending physician's personal cell number. He had stationed 2 of his men in the corridor, though they couldn't do anything useful and he knew it. None of it touched this. A knock at the door. He didn't look up. Room service? A woman's voice. American accented Korean, careful and self-conscious. I have the 10 a.m. meal tray. Leave it, Yongjin said in Korean. A pause. Then, quietly, in English, I don't think she's going to eat if I just leave it. Now he looked up. She was standing just inside the doorframe. A black woman in her early 30s, hospital auxiliary uniform, a food tray in both hands. Not a nurse, not a doctor. Her name badge said Nadia in blue block letters. She was looking, not at him, but past him, at his mother. At the woman in the bed who had turned her face back toward the window. The 2 of Yongjin's men stationed outside were suddenly, silently, filling the doorway behind her. He raised one hand when they stopped. My mother is not eating, he said. A statement, not an invitation. Nadia set the tray on the rolling table, pulled it close, sat down on the floor. Not in a chair, not at a polite distance. On the floor, cross-legged, at the level of the bed rail, so that her face was even with the old woman's. Yongjin did not move. Aomani, Nadia said softly. The Korean word for mother, spoken by someone who clearly did not speak Korean, who had learned this one word deliberately for this moment. One bite, just to show me. Park Soon-yi turned her head. She looked at this stranger on the floor beside her bed. This woman with no business being there, no authority, no connection to her or her son or the cold empire he had built. And something in her face changed. She reached for the spoon. Based on your instruction, here is. Nadia Ose had not planned to be in room 418. She had planned to be in radiology, delivering the 10 a.m. tray to a Mr. Bayek on the 2nd floor, which was her assigned route, which was where her clipboard said she was supposed to be. But the elevator had taken her to the 4th floor instead. A button pressed wrong, a moment of distraction. And when the doors opened, she had stepped off before she registered the mistake. That was the first accident. The second was looking through the open door. She had been a hospital orderly at Seoul National University Hospital for 11 months. Before that, 3 years as a pediatric care aide at a community clinic in Baltimore. Before that, nursing school 2 semesters in, until the money ran out and didn't come back. She understood bodies that were giving up. She had learned to read the particular stillness of a person who had stopped participating in their own survival. The way they held their shoulders, the way they faced walls, the way their hands lay flat and open instead of curled. The body broadcasting what the mouth wouldn't say. She had seen it in her own mother. Margaret Osei had been 67 when she stopped eating after Nadia's father died, not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly, methodically, like a woman tidying up before a long trip. Smaller portions, then skipped meals, then the chair at the table where she used to sit just empty, pushed in, not even pretended. Nadia had sat with her every night for 6 weeks, not talking, not coaxing, just present. She'd learned that presence was its own language. That sometimes a body that had decided to drift would hold on if it could feel another body nearby, breathing, warm, refusing to leave. It had worked, barely, eventually. Her mother was still alive, still in Baltimore, still sometimes calling Nadia at 7 a.m. to ask about the weather in Seoul, as though Korea were a neighborhood she'd misplaced. Nadia thought about her every time she walked past a room where something was quietly wrong. She had walked past room 418 and stopped because the woman inside had her face to the wall, and a man in a chair beside her who was absolutely still, in the way that only people who were trying very hard not to fall apart were still. She had not known who he was. That was important. She hadn't known. She would find out later, in stages, and each one more alarming than the last. That the man in the chair was Yongjin Lee, whose name appeared in exactly 0 official criminal records, but in the private knowledge of every prosecutor in Seoul, every port authority officer from Incheon to Busan, and 3 separate Interpol files that had been quietly shelved for reasons no one at Interpol liked to discuss. That the 2 men outside the door were not hospital staff. That the particular way people moved around him in the corridor, widening their path, dropping their eyes, was not coincidence or courtesy. She found out none of this until later. In the moment, standing in that doorway, what she saw was a sick old woman and a son who didn't know what else to try. She had knocked. She had been told to leave the tray. She had sat down on the floor instead. Not because she was brave. She would have pushed back hard on brave. She sat down because in that room, with that woman's face turned toward the wall, standing up felt like giving up. And Nadia Osei had a specific, personal, deeply inconvenient inability to give up on people who had stopped eating. Her supervisor would ask her later why she had deviated from her route. She would not have a good answer. But Park Soon-yi took the spoon, and in the chair beside the bed, a man who had not asked for help and did not know how to accept it, watched a stranger on the floor accomplish in 60 seconds what 4 days and the full weight of his power had failed to do. He said nothing, but he did not look away. He found her in the corridor 20 minutes later, not by accident. Nadia had returned the tray to the cart, signed the meal log, and then was halfway to the elevator when she heard footsteps behind her. Not hurried, not aggressive, but deliberate in the way that made the back of her neck register them before her brain did. She turned around. Yongjin Lee stood 6 feet away with his hands in his coat pockets and an expression that was not quite readable. Up close, he was taller than she'd clocked from the doorway. The coat was charcoal, expensive, the kind of cut that didn't announce itself. His face was composed in that particular way of someone who had spent a long time making sure nothing showed. "The spoon," he said. Nadia waited. She used the spoon. He said it the way someone states a fact they are still internally verifying. She ate half the bowl. "Good," Nadia said. The porridge was still warm. That helps. A pause. I need you to come back, he said. Tomorrow morning, same time. Nadia looked at him. I'm not assigned to this floor. I know. He said it without apology, without explanation, as though the assignment were a logistical detail he had already decided to resolve. I'll speak with the hospital administrator this afternoon. You can't just... She stopped, looked at the two men standing at a respectful distance down the corridor, both of them watching the conversation without appearing to watch it. She looked back at him. She recalibrated. I'll need to check with my supervisor, she said carefully. Thinks your supervisor will approve it, he said. Still no apology, still no explanation. She believed him. By the following morning, Nadia had been formally reassigned to the 4th floor, patient care support, special cases, effective immediately. Her supervisor had delivered this news with a particular neutrality that told her everything she needed to know about where the request had originated. She came back. Park Soon-yi was awake when she arrived, propped against the pillows at a slightly less defeated angle than the day before. She looked at Nadia in the doorway with the careful assessment of someone who had lived long enough to take their time deciding. Waidashi waseo, the old woman said. Why did you come back? Not a question, an observation. Nadia set the tray on the rolling table and pulled it close. They sat down in the chair this time, the one Young-jin had been occupying, which was empty now, and looked at her. Because you only ate half yesterday, Nadia said in English, then slowly, in the Korean she'd been studying for 11 months, inadequately but sincerely. 오늘은 다 먹어요. Today you eat all of it. Park Soon-yi stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A short sound, rusty from disuse, but real. Hangujeo modejana, she said. Your Korean is terrible. Yes, Nadia agreed. The old woman reached for the spoon. Young-jin came in at noon. He stopped in the doorway. His mother was asleep, the meal tray empty beside her. And Nadia was in the chair, reading a translation guide on her phone, mouthing words quietly to herself. He looked at the empty tray for a moment. Then he looked at Nadia. She ate everything? His voice was lower than usual. She complained about the seasoning for about 10 minutes first. Nadia set her phone down. That's good, actually. People who are finding reasons to argue with the food are still interested in the food. He was quiet. He crossed the room and stood at the foot of the bed, looking at his mother's face in sleep. Softer now. The particular hardness of someone bracing against pain temporarily gone. He stood there for a long time. Nadia did not fill the silence. She had learned, somewhere in the last 2 days, that this man's silences were not empty. They were doing something, working through something that didn't have a faster route. Finally, he said, without turning around, "What do you need to keep coming?" Not what would you like. Not I would appreciate. What do you need? The language of a man unaccustomed to asking but willing, in this room, for reasons he had not yet examined, to try. Nadia considered him. She needs to feel like someone is choosing to be here, she said. Not assigned, not paid extra. Choosing. A beat. Are you choosing? He asked. She looked at Park Soon-yi, breathing slowly in the afternoon light. Yes, she said. He nodded once and did not leave. The man arrived on the 3rd day. Nadia was in the corridor refilling the water pitcher when she saw him, late 50s, silver at the temples. A suit that matched Young-jin's in quality but not in stillness. Where Young-jin wore expensive clothes the way certain men wore armor, this man wore his the way men wore rankings, to be read, to be respected on sight. He walked past her without looking at her. She noticed because Young-jin's men noticed. The two in the corridor didn't move, didn't speak, but something shifted in their posture, a tightening, a recalibration. The way dogs shift when they smell something familiar, but unwelcome. She took the water pitcher back into room 418. Young-jin was already standing. He had been sitting when she left. Now he was at the window, his back to the door, hands clasped behind him. He had heard the footsteps before she'd turned the corner. The man walked in without knocking. "Hyung," he said. "Brother." The word deployed the way some men deploy titles, not as warmth, as claim. Park Soon-yi opened her eyes, looked at the man in the doorway, looked at her son's back, said nothing. "Sung-min," Young-jin said. He did not turn around. Nadia moved toward the door. A quiet instinct. This was not her conversation. "Stay." Young-jin said it without looking at her either. Quiet, certain. She stayed. Sung-min Lee was Young-jin's younger brother by 4 years. Nadia would piece this together later, slowly, from fragments, from the hospital administrator's careful tone when she'd asked, from the way the nurses avoided the corridor on days he visited, from the particular expression on Park Soon-yi's face when he entered a room, which was not the expression of a mother seeing her son. It was the expression of a woman measuring distance. What Nadia understood in real time, without context, was simpler. This man had come to undo something. He stood at the foot of the bed and spoke in Korean, his voice modulated to a register that sounded, on the surface, like concern, like the occasional word she caught. Hospital, treatment, better facility, home. A sentence she almost understood. Something about arrangements already made. Park Soon-yi looked at the ceiling. Young-jin turned around. He didn't speak immediately. He looked at his brother the way he looked at most things, with the full weight of his attention, unhurried, giving nothing away. It was only because Nadia had spent 3 days in this room, learning this man's silences, that she could read what was underneath it. He was angry, not hot anger, the other kind. "She's eating," Young-jin said finally. In English, Nadia realized, for her benefit, a deliberate choice. For the first time in 4 days, she is eating. You will not move her. The facility in Gangnam has a full oncology ward. She is eating. He said it again. Same volume, same weight. That is what matters right now. Not the facility, not the arrangements you've made without consulting me. This. He gestured, a small, precise movement, as toward the empty meal tray on the table beside the bed. Sung-min's eyes moved to Nadia for the first time. He looked at her the way she had been looked at in certain rooms her entire life. The assessment that wasn't really an assessment because the conclusion had been reached before she entered. His expression didn't change. He didn't need it to. "You're allowing a hospital orderly to make decisions about Iomoni's care," he said in English now, back to his brother. "I'm allowing someone who got her to eat to keep doing what's working," Young-jin said. "She's not qualified. She's effective." A pause. "There is a difference. You know this." Sung-min looked at his mother. Park Soon-yi had closed her eyes. Her hands were folded over the blanket with the deliberateness of a woman who had made a choice about where to spend her attention, and she was not spending it here. Sung-min straightened his jacket. "This isn't finished," he said to his brother. "It is for today," Young-jin replied. After he left, the room was quiet for a long moment. Nadia set the water pitcher down. Park Soon-yi opened one eye, looked at her son's back, then looked at Nadia. "Gyo saram sirheo," the old woman said flatly. Nadia didn't need the translation guide for that one. "I don't like him." "Nadu," Nadia said carefully. "Me neither." Park Soon-yi closed her eye again. But the corner of her mouth moved. It happened on the 5th night. Nadia had stayed late. Not because anyone asked her to. Her shift had ended at 6. But because Park Soon-yi had been restless all afternoon, sleeping in short, broken intervals. waking with a confusion that the nurses said was normal post-surgical, and that her body was still negotiating with itself. Nadia had stayed because leaving felt wrong in the specific way that leaving sometimes felt wrong, when you knew someone would wake up and the room would be empty. She was in the chair reading when Young-jin came back. It was past 9. She hadn't expected him. He stopped in the doorway when he saw her, a fraction of a second's pause, then came in and sat in the other chair, the one on the opposite side of the bed, the one he always used, and said nothing. His mother was asleep. They sat in silence for a while, the three of them in that room with its low light and its window showing the dark city. And Nadia read her book, and Young-jin sat with his forearms on his knees and looked at his mother's face. After a while, he said quietly, "She used to sing." Nadia looked up. Oh, he wasn't looking at her. He was looking at his mother, at the small architecture of her sleeping face. When we were young, she sang while she cooked. The same 3 songs, always the same 3, in a rotation that never changed. He paused. I haven't heard her sing in... He stopped, calculated something silently. 12 years. Nadia closed her book. What happened 12 years ago, she said. Not carefully, not cautiously, just directly, the way she'd learned he preferred things said. He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. My father died, he said. And then, what I'd been building, what I'd told her was a legitimate business. She found out what it actually was. Another pause. She didn't leave. She isn't that kind of woman, but she stopped singing. Nadia looked at Park Soon-yi's hands folded on the blanket. She's here, though, Nadia said. She called you. When she got sick, she called you. My men called me. She let them. He looked at her then. A direct look, the full weight of it, the kind he didn't distribute carelessly. That's not the same thing, he said. It's not nothing either, she said. He held her gaze for a moment. Then he looked away, back at his mother, and the silence came back. But it was a different texture now. Something had moved in it, shifted the way furniture shifts when someone has been sitting somewhere long enough to leave a shape behind. You're not afraid of me, he said, not accusatory, almost puzzled. I didn't say that. You act like you're not. Nadia considered this honestly. I think... She started, then stopped. He reorganized. I think you're dangerous the way certain weather is dangerous. It doesn't mean the weather is trying to hurt you specifically. It means you need to understand what you're standing in. He looked at her again. That's an unusual way to think about it, he said. I'm an unusual person to be having this conversation. Something moved across his face then. Not quite a smile. She was beginning to understand that his face didn't do that easily, that expressions on it were events rather than habits. But something adjacent to it. A brief warming, like light shifting on a wall. Then it was gone. He stood, straightened his coat with the automatic precision of a man whose composure was a physical practice. You should go home, he said. It's late. I know. He moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the frame and his back to her. The 3 songs, he said quietly. If she starts to sing, even just humming, tell me. He left before she could answer. Nadia sat in the chair for a moment after his footsteps faded down the corridor. Then she looked at Park Soon-yi sleeping, and at the window, and at the city outside it, pressing its 10 million lights against the dark. She picked up her book. She didn't read any of it. She found out on a Tuesday. Not from him. He would not have told her voluntarily. She understood that now. understood that Yongjin Lee operated on a philosophy of controlled disclosure, giving people exactly what they needed to know at the moment they needed to know it, and nothing earlier. It was not cruelty. It was the habit of a man who had learned that information, given too soon, became a weapon in other people's hands. She found out from Sung Min. He came back on Tuesday morning while Yongjin was meeting with the oncologist down the hall. Nadia was changing the water in the small vase of chrysanthemums someone had sent. White ones, formal, the kind you brought to hospital rooms when you wanted to signal care without warmth. When Sung Min walked in and closed the door behind him, Park Soon-yi was awake. She looked at her younger son and said nothing. Just watched. Sung Min looked at Nadia with the same expression he'd worn the first day, the conclusion before assessment look. But this time, he spoke to her directly. "You should know what you're involved in," he said pleasantly. The pleasantness was the most alarming part. "Sung Min." Park Soon-yi's voice was quiet and absolutely flat. He ignored her. He told Nadia, calmly, efficiently, the way you brief someone before asking them to make a decision. Port operations between Incheon and 3 cities Nadia had never been to. Financial structures that existed on paper as import logistics. The men who had disappeared over the years when the structures required it. 2 prosecutors who had built cases and then, quietly, stopped building them. The particular reach of a particular name. He laid it out like a man setting a table. "I'm telling you this," he said, "because my brother won't, and because you deserve to understand the nature of what you're sitting in the middle of." Nadia set the vase down. She looked at Park Soon-yi, whose face was doing something complicated and controlled. The expression of a woman who had been living beside a truth for 12 years and watching it be used as a weapon against her son. Why?" Nadia said to Sung Min. "I'm sorry? Why do you want me to leave?" She kept her voice even. "That's what this is. So why? What does it change for you if I go?" A brief pause, the first crack in the pleasantness. "My mother's care is a family matter," he said. "Your mother hadn't eaten in 4 days before I sat on that floor," Nadia said. "That's also a family matter. Different kind." The door opened. Yongjin took in the room in under 2 seconds. His brother's position, his mother's face, Nadia standing at the window with her hands loose at her sides, and his expression closed in the way a hand closes. "Out," he said to Sung Min. She needed to know. "Out." Sung Min left. He did it without rushing, which was its own kind of statement. The door closed. The room was very quiet. Yongjin didn't look at her immediately. He went to his mother first, checked her face, touched her hand briefly with 2 fingers, a small gesture, almost clinical. But Nadia had been in this room long enough to know it wasn't. Then he turned. "How much?" he said. "Enough," she said. He nodded, looked at the window, looked back at her. "You're going to ask me if it's true," he said. "No," she said. "I'm going to ask you something harder than that." He waited. "Does she know you're sorry?" Nadia said. "Not about what you built, about the singing, about the 12 years of her not singing. Does she know?" The silence that followed was the longest one yet. Park Soon-yi made a small sound from the bed. Not a word. Something below words. Both of them looked at her. The old woman's eyes were closed, but her lips were moving. Barely. Haltingly. The way something moves when it has been still for a very long time and is remembering that it can. She was humming. One of the 3 songs. Yongjin's hand found the back of the chair beside him. He gripped it once. Then he sat down, carefully, like a man who did not trust his legs. Nadia did not say anything. Some moments did not need witness, only presence. She stayed. Park Soon-yi ate breakfast on her own on the 8th day. Not because Nadia sat on the floor, not because Yongjin was in the chair. Because she reached for the tray herself at 7:40 in the morning, before either of them arrived. And the night nurse found her eating congee with the focused deliberateness of someone who had made a private decision. The nurse told Nadia when she came in at 8. Nadia stood in the corridor for a moment with that information. Then she went in. Park Soon-yi looked up when she entered, pointed at the empty bowl with her spoon, a single declarative gesture. "Dameo jeoso," she said. "I finished it all." "Jal hesoyo," Nadia said. "You did well." The old woman made a sound that was approximately satisfaction. Then she pointed the spoon at the chair. "Sit." Nadia sat. They had developed over 8 days, a companionship that did not require much language. Park Soon-yi would speak in Korean, slowly, when she wanted to be understood, and Nadia would respond in the Korean she had, supplemented by expression and gesture and the occasional phone held up with a translation. It was imperfect. It was enough. This morning, Park Soon-yi wanted to talk about her sons, not Yongjin specifically. Both of them. She spoke for a long time, measured and deliberate, watching Nadia's face to check comprehension. Nadia caught perhaps 60% of it. But the 60% she caught assembled into something coherent. 2 boys. A father who had been harsh in the way of men who believed harshness was preparation. The older one who had absorbed the harshness and decided, young, that protection was the only reliable form of love. The younger one who had watched his brother build power and decided that proximity to it was the same as having it. She had known, Park Soon-yi said, not about everything. But she had known enough, and she had stayed because leaving would have meant abandoning the son who needed her most. And she had always understood, even in the years of silence, even in the years of not singing, that Yongjin was still in there. Still the boy who used to sit in the kitchen while she cooked, still listening for the songs. 나디아는 잠시 멈춰서서 곰곰이 생각했다. 그걸 어떻게 말해야 할까요? 나디아는 조심스럽게 말했다. 너는 그에게 그가 원하는 말을 해줘야 한다고. 박순이는 그녀를 바라보았다. 알고 있어. 그녀는 말하며 눈을 감았다. He knows. Knowing and hearing are different, Nadia said, in English now, because she didn't have the Korean for it, and it mattered too much to approximate. He needs to hear it. From you. Out loud. The old woman studied her for a long moment with the particular attention she gave to things she was deciding about. Then she nodded. Once. The way her son nodded. The gesture was so identical that Nadia felt something shift in her chest. Yongjin arrived at 9. He came in and stopped. His mother was sitting up straighter than she had since the surgery. The empty bowl was on the tray. The window was open 2 inches, and the morning air was moving the curtain slightly. Park Soon-yi looked at her son and said something in Korean that Nadia didn't fully catch. 4 or 5 sentences, quiet and direct. The measured voice of a woman who had been composing something for a long time and was finally delivering it. Yongjin stood in the center of the room and listened. He did not move, did not look away. His face did the thing it rarely did. It opened just slightly, just enough. The way a door opens when the person inside has finally decided to stop holding it shut. When his mother finished, he crossed to the bed, sat on the edge of it, took both her hands in his. He said something back, low, in Korean. Nadia didn't try to translate it. She stood up quietly. She collected the empty tray, moved toward the door. Nadia, see? She turned. Park Soon-yi was looking at her over her son's shoulder. Her eyes were wet, but her face was composed, the face of a woman who had spent a lifetime deciding what she would and would not let take her down. She said something. 4 words. Nadia looked at Yongjin. He translated without being asked, his voice slightly uneven. "She says you brought me back." Nadia looked at the old woman, at the sun, at the room that had held, over 8 days, more grief and more grace than most rooms ever got to hold. "Anyo," she said softly. "No." She glanced at Yongjin one last time. "You were always here," she said. "Both of you. You just needed someone to sit on the floor." She left the tray outside, or walked down the corridor. Behind her, through the closed door, faint and imperfect and absolutely real, she heard it. Park Soon-yi was singing. "Here is what I want you to sit with." Park Soon-yi did not start eating again because the hospital changed her medication. She did not start eating again because her son spent more money or made more calls or applied more pressure. She started eating again because someone sat on the floor. That's it. That's the whole thing. Someone chose to come down to her level. Not literally, though that too, but in every way that mattered. No agenda, no authority, no transaction, just presence, offered freely by a person who had no obvious reason to give it. We live in a world that rewards the loud intervention, the dramatic rescue, the powerful person sweeping in to fix what's broken. And sometimes that matters. Sometimes you need Yongjin Lee to make the phone call, to clear the floor, to use every resource at his disposal. But sometimes, more often than we admit, what a person needs is someone willing to be inconvenienced by their pain. Someone who misses their floor. Someone who sits down when everyone else is standing. Someone who learns 3 words in a language they don't speak because those 3 words might reach a woman that nothing else has reached. You don't have to be powerful to do that. You just have to be willing. There is a person in your life right now, maybe in your family, maybe at work, maybe someone you pass every week without stopping, who has turned their face to the wall, who has stopped eating, metaphorically or literally, who has gone quiet in the way that people go quiet when they have decided privately that no one is coming. You don't need a title. You don't need credentials. You don't need to know exactly what to say. You just need to sit down and stay. If this story moved you, if you've ever been the person who needed someone to sit on the floor, or if you've ever been the person who chose to, drop a comment below and tell me about it. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, a friend, a family member, someone in your world who has gone a little too quiet, share this video with them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is simply show them they are worth showing up for. Hit that subscribe button and then click the video on screen right now. Because more stories are coming. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the spaces where power meets compassion. Where the most dangerous man in the room turns out to be the most human one. I'll see you in the next one.